All right, your next question is question 6 on section 5.5. This one is asking about where does the graph fall below the x-axis because it's a less than. This is a polynomial, so the first thing we need to do is factor it. Well, I can take out an x. And now I got a factors of 80 that equal 2. Well, that's 8 and 10. So now I set each piece equal to 0, and I get x equals 0, x equals 10, and x equals -8. Now, these are my critical points that I'm going to test around. So there's my x-axis. There's my 0. I'm cheating. There's my 10, and there's my -8. So I'm kind of tight on space. So I need to test to the left -8, between -8 and 0, between 0 and 10, and then to the right of 10. So I have 4 tests I have to do on this one. So I'm going to pull these out. So we get to pick a number. A number left of -8, well, I see -9. I need a number between -8 and 0. Well, I like my math easy, so let's go -1. I need a test point between 0 and 10. Again, I like to go it easy. And I need something bigger than 10. So I see 11. So I'm going to plug it in to this. And again, all I need to care about is it positive or negative when it comes out, because remember, if it's positive, it means it's above the x-axis. If it's negative, it means it's below the x-axis. So if I plug in -9 into the x, I get a negative. If I plug in a -9 in the middle one of x minus 10, I get a negative. And if I plug in -9 plus 8, well, that's -1, so that gives me a negative. And a negative times a negative times a negative gives me a negative. So that means my graph is down here. All right, so now I plug in -1. I plug in -1 to the plane x, of course, I'm going to negative. If I plug in -1 into the first parentheses, I get a negative, because -1 minus 10 is -11. Now, if I plug in -1 into the third one of x plus 8, that'd be -1 plus 8. That gives me a positive. Now, when I multiply a negative times a negative, I get a positive times a positive is a positive. That tells me my graph is now between -8 and 0, above the x-axis. All right, now I'm going to do it with 1. Again, if I plug in for the plane x, a +1 gives me a positive. 1 minus 10 gives me a negative. 1 plus 8 gives me a positive. So a positive times a negative times a positive gives me a negative. So that means my graph is down here. Time to plug in 11. Well, if I plug in 11 in the first one, it's positive. 11 minus 10 is positive, and 11 plus 8 is positive. So my answer is positive, which means my graph is up here. So where am I below 0 or below the x-axis? This portion and this portion. This portion is coming from -infinity all the way up to 8, -8. It goes back below at 0 to 10. All right. But yeah, those are how you're just looking. And this bothers, I'll be honest, this bothers a lot of students because you want to give actual numbers. I'm not actually graphing. So that's the reason I really don't care about the numbers. I'm just testing. Am I above the x-axis or below? All right. Good luck.